Hello everyone. I'm Mike Cahill, and welcome to a special edition of Hatfield Currents. This is one of two special editions that are airing at this point in time. These are our annual candidate shows. Each year, certain elected positions in town are up for re-election, and this year the contests are two people for one opening on the Board of Assessors, and three people for two openings on the school committee. And all of these candidates were in fact invited to come and participate on a show here at Hatfield Currents. But as it turns out, our invitations to attend only resulted in one candidate for the school committee wanting to participate and one candidate for the Board of Assessors wanting to participate. So before I begin, because it's kind of a one-on-one show this evening, I do want to make it clear that in no way does the appearance of any candidate on Hatfield Currents imply that Hatfield Currents endorses that candidate, or myself implies that I endorse that candidate, because neither the show nor myself does. This particular show is with the one candidate, one of two candidates for the Board of Assessors. And I have with me at this point Christopher Smith. Christopher,
hi,
good to have you with us.
Thanks, Mike.
On the show, and want to congratulate you, I guess, on continuing to want to be involved in the town. Thanks. And wanting to run again for the assessors. Christopher is one of two candidates, as I said earlier. The other candidate is Larry Williams, and Larry was invited to participate in the show, but Larry never responded to the invitation. So Christopher's got me one-on-one at this point. So Christopher, before we actually get into this conversation about your candidacy, do you want to, for connection purposes, if people want to contact you for any information or to get any other questions answered that they might have, do you want to give out your phone number and or email?
Oh, sure. Yeah. My phone number is 247-5362, and my email is cvegs@comcast.net.
Okay, great. So in a few words, just a few words, tell us why, Christopher, you're running for assessor again, and what you feel you bring to the Board of Assessors.
Well, in a very few words, I have the experience, I have the training, and I feel that makes me qualified. The assessor's position is really one of something of a profession, like an accountant or a treasurer or something like that, in which you have to get training. I know the town very well. I've lived here since 76, roughly. I've owned property. I've been in many town committees and boards, and I know the land, I know the state laws. I hold 7 certificates from the state in assessing. And again, I've been on the board since 96, so that's about 16 years.
16 years, so this is, well, in terms of terms, I guess you divide that by 3, and it's about 5 years plus.
Yeah.
5 terms plus.
Yeah.
But so you are the incumbent, and you are being challenged by Larry Williams. Any thoughts on this challenge? I mean, it's just, what does this say to you as an incumbent and the one that's up for re-election?
Well, it's a former selectman kind of put it this way. It seems that every year you're in office, you lose more and more people that will vote for you, possibly. But I think, again, I'd like to go back to that, which is I see assessing as being different than say a select board member or a planning board member. We don't do policy. We do, we're managed very closely by the Department of Revenue. You really don't have wiggle room. And one of the things that we did after the reval of 2010, we reorganized the office, the whole Board of Assessors, and restructured it in such a way as that we outsourced the valuation portion of it to a company by the name of Patriot Properties, who also provides us our software. This made it more of an objective rather than subjective process in valuation. So there was, as you may recall, in 2010 when we did that, one of our other former members of Assessors thought that we were going to cause the assistant assessor or administrative assistant assessor at that time to lose their job and to be tossed in the street with the family. And it turns out I was able to find him a new job in Beckett, paying actually $2,000 or $3,000 more. So in the process, he wasn't hurt. The town is saving $18,000 a year by doing this. So we're streamlining it, we're giving better service, and so on. In the process of the changeover, we did have, in the 16 years that I've been an assessor, I've only had to go to the appellate tax board 4 times, and 2 of those were just recently. And again, that was part of this changeover process. And a couple of landowners who had, just felt that our changeover wasn't something that they could agree to. We tried to work with them. And I think that's part of the driving of this, I'm guessing. But I'd like to think that for the most part, I'd say 99% of the town seems to like what we've done. And we've improved in so many ways. That you can get values online now. You can get your record card online. We have, I spearheaded GIS mapping back in the late 90s. It's now fully fledged and available online. You can go to Patriot Properties and use 16 different criteria to evaluate your property against other similar properties. That's a wonderful tool as well. So I think we've made a lot of improvement. And
you talked about some of this online stuff. Where online is this? These capabilities.
Main Street GIS is if you go. By the way, if you go to the town website, townofhatfield.org, click on the assessors. Both of these tools are available if you click the assessor's office. So you can get to either the Patriot or the Main Street GIS and get any and all information on your property right from the comfort of your computer.
Right.
So,
so in terms of the ongoing issues that are on the plate of the Board of Assessors, what in your mind are the top 2 or 3?
Well, the main thing right now is we're in a 9-year cyclical revaluation. Well, that means.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Okay, right. What does that mean?
Revaluation is something.
Okay. Well, every 3 years, the town is required to do what's considered a standard reval. And in that, so it's divided in thirds, essentially. So on the 9th or the 3rd of the standard reval is the cyclical, which means you're supposed to have gone out and looked at every property in the town.
Physically look at every
Physically look at it. Okay. What happened was, the main reason we reorganized was because we were behind in that process. In FY10, the last reval, the problem was that the Department of Revenue said, how are you going to get this work done when you haven't, your administrative assistant assessor hasn't gotten enough of this work, the inspections done, because they were spending so much time in the office. So that's when we had to take an initiative by bringing Patriot Properties in. They bring out, and we're ahead now, by the way. We've almost completed the full inspection of the town in 2.5 years. We did 9 years' work.
When you say we, you outsource to Patriot.
Yes.
To Patriot Property, and they have provided the staffing to do that.
Exactly.
Or we've outsourced to them.
Right.
Okay.
And they bring out specialists for residential, specialists for commercial, specialists for personal property. And we're doing this, I like to touch on this. We're getting so much more service for so much less cost. It's a wonder we didn't think of this before.
So, you care to share that cost benefit analysis with the viewers? You mentioned something about $18,000 a year.
Right.
When the assistant administrative assessor was on board.
Right.
I'm assuming that was.
We were paying
compensation.
Yeah. No. No. You have to.
Okay.
It's a trade-off, right?
Sure.
So, essentially, we were paying the administrative assistant assessor $43,000 a year, and we had a clerk who was getting around 13 or 14. The clerk now still does, who we call the assistant assessor, essentially is a clerk's position, does the main paperwork in the town and so on, does some entry work into the software. But that job is still a part-time job. The Patriot Properties, we pay $23,800 a year for their service and software, full package. So that's where that 18 comes into savings. It actually is a little bit more. If we had kept the administrative assistant assessor, we would have had to outsource the data collection, because
over and above.
So that made
position.
You might have to this year would have had to factor in maybe another $10,000 or $12,000. So if you add that in, it's even more savings. Yeah. So it's made some very good sense. As I say, I think there's one or two people that are very upset that, for instance, we might have picked up, as part of the Patriot inspections, things that had been missed over the years. And some of these properties hadn't been inspected in more than 9 years. So these are things that...
So we're in the third cycle of this 9-year revaluation process.
And they're going to study us very carefully, the Department of Revenue. In 2010, we had to sign an agreement in which we had to meet 10 conditions. And, I, as chair, signed that. I signed a plan last month to carry that through. So, again, folks, if I'm missing... and I'm, by the way, the only assessor who has training and the experience to do this. You're going to have to, I don't know how you're going to complete. It's going to be a difficult thing for the town to do. Yeah.
Now, when you say the training to do this, what does that mean?
To do the revaluation, to understand, to be able to sit down with the Department of Revenue representatives and explain, why did we have so much commercial growth? Why is the farmland valued in a certain way? And so on.
So that begs the question, I guess, Christopher, and as a resident, why only one person with that training and that education and those qualifications? Why aren't there more? Why isn't one of the other two assessors getting trained, getting educated, so that we've got backup for the one person that might have it?
I sure would like that. The other two assessors have had the opportunity to go to school. I go to school every year. I go to the seminars the Department of Revenue puts on. The other two assessors have had that option, and have chosen that not to do that. Again, keep in mind, I've been serving as chair for 12 out of those 16 years.
Sure.
And
Well,
so they kind of rely on me for this purpose.
Right.
I mean, it's better to have one than none, right?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. No,
No.
I concur.
But
it just,
it would be nice. I agree. It
from my
would be
standpoint,
nice.
I would just,
Yeah.
from a resident standpoint, I would think that we'd better have two than just one.
Right. True.
For the reasons you just mentioned. So we got off a little bit on a tangent. We're talking
Okay.
about the top 3 issues on your plate, one
Okay.
of which is the completion, I guess, of this 9-year reval.
All right.
What are the others that are?
Okay, well, the other is we just brought pictometry on, which is a adjunct program to GIS. And what this does is it's
The GIS, for the people who are watching, is Geographic Information System.
systems, right?
Okay, and that's a computerized functionality that's available. That's what they call a information database.
It's
that
well,
the
it's
real estate is
mapping.
portrayed in.
Yeah,
The
right.
mapping. Right.
Right. What pictometry does is it's a new thing that has been it's been around for the state has offered it for free to a lot of communities that have GIS, and this past in 2011 we had a flyover done of Hatfield, and what this does is it gives us the ability to compare to 2008 flyover to 2011 and pick up new growth. It allows us to actually measure within 2% accuracy any and all structures. So it's very sophisticated, and it's computerized so that it will, tell you after the flyover is done which properties to look at for changes and so on to see if your data is up to date. So we've got this information. I've been so busy in the last fall with getting the final cyclical inspection work done and getting that information, the sketching and so on, into the computer system that I kind of put pictometry to one side. But it is an important feature as we go into this fall, so that I can back up the data collection that was done in the fall of 11 with the pictometry information.
So will you be able to integrate pictometry with GIS?
Yes, and also
And will
Patriot
residents
also
as users be able to utilize that functionality?
One of the other things we're hoping to do too was offer it to the building inspector and to the DPW. Both of them have shown some serious interest in this, as well as Chief Belden of the fire department, because when if they had that ability on a laptop as they're approaching a fire, they could literally see the building in 180 degrees. They could really look at the building, see where the best access points are and so on. And also where the hydrants are can be all laid out in there as well. Yeah, so it's very impressive software and technology. Again, if I'm no longer on the board, there's no other person in the office who has done any work with it. Right. So that will get put away, and it's unfortunate, but.
Okay. So, in your mind, looking back at the last several years, couple of terms, I mean, are there any things that concern you in terms of either they're not having been achieved that you would have liked to have seen achieved, or the pace of something has gone so slowly that it's a little disconcerting?
Well, one of the things you got to keep in mind, and I try to tell folks this, we're always a year behind. The values, so in other words, the fiscal year or the valuation is as of January 1 of the previous year. So it hasn't.
Okay, give us an example.
Okay.
Okay. Let's use fiscal 13 tax bills.
Okay.
Okay.
It's based on the value of your property as of January 1 of 2012.
Of 2012.
Right.
Okay.
So if you understand that and you think, well, let's say that there's, for some reason, this summer there's a drastic, Hatfield has been sort of lucky that it hasn't seen, reduction in values
Evaluation.
as a lot of other communities have. But I think it's our proximity to Northampton that sort of keeps those values somewhat in check. But if you see these things happening and you wonder, well, geez, why aren't we keeping up? It's because we're a little behind, and we are forced to be that way because we have to look at the sales prior to January 1 of 2012. Use those for our comparatives as we go ahead.
Right.
And that's hard to explain to people. Well, why can't you just take where it is right now?
And that's the same situation for any community.
All
correct?
communities are the same.
Okay, that's
right.
a DOR
Right.
policy and procedure.
Right,
Okay.
exactly. And I think too, because we have been doing interim adjustment, which was recommended by the Department of Revenue after the big disaster in Springfield, when, as you recall, the town got taken over and valuations were all kind of screwed up down there. And so we have been doing interim adjustments on a yearly basis rather than waiting every 3 years, which was the practice before. This has been, I think, a very good positive. It's more work for us, but it's a very positive thing because now we aren't 3 years behind. We're actually just a year. So, and I think people appreciate that we've been doing that. The Patriot system is fantastic. I've worked on 3 assessing software packages: the Point, the Vision, and the old Patriot, which was the DOS base. The current version is bar none fantastic. It is. Yeah. The sketching is great. The ability to handle mixed-use properties is better than any of the others. Mm-hmm. So I think our accuracy is very, very good. And the sales, as we see them coming in, we find that we're pretty much right on the mark. I mean, we try to stay 5 to 10% under, mm-hmm. and we're staying right there. So I got to say that this changeover to the new Patriot system has been very successful, mm-hmm. and I'd like to see it through. And this next term would, I think we get the final. Once we get past the cyclical inspection, we'll.
All right. So if you're reelected, Christopher, and we cycle ahead 12 months, mm-hmm. What would you say you would have completed over the course of the last 12 months at this time next year?
Well, we'll have the final cyclical revaluation done, and that will demonstrate. I think we'll have regained the full trust of the Department of Revenue.
The question: once that final 3-year reval is done, do you begin a new cycle?
Yes.
Okay.
And the
a
first
new 9-year cycle, or
yes,
whatever you call it. Okay.
Exactly. And again, lesson learned. Let's not wait. So after we get done with this in the fall, okay, we have to sit down with Patriot, and I would like to see the town negotiate, instead of a 3-year contract, which we did in 10, a 9-year contract, in which we have so we know how to budget going for the next 9 years. So everything is, and this will reduce even the costs that we're paying now. So that, and as part of that plan, the RFP or whatever we sit down and do with them, the contract, it will spell out that in the next reval, we'll have 1/3 of the town inspected, the next one, the next third, and so on. Mm-hmm. So it won't be a rush, and I think it was very difficult this last time because we had to, those phone messages you get, and so on. We were sending them out to certain areas to say the Patriot guy was coming in and so mm-hmm. on. And mm-hmm. I think we'd like to do this in a less rushed way. Mm-hmm. And I think that'll be overall much better for not only us, but I think a better received by the community as well.
All right. So there's one thing that it's still kind of confusing to me, and maybe it is to some of our viewers. Okay, as a resident, if my property has been revalued this year, when will be the next time that my property is up for reappraisal, if you will? 3 years from now or 9 years from now?
Well, it has to be done, according to the Department of Revenue, within that 9 years. They will come
so
in.
There potentially are some properties that are haven't been revalued or reappraised for 9 years.
Right.
When you're in the last year of a 9-year cycle.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So, I mean, what we found in FY10, or what the Department of Revenue found, was about 80% had not been inspected.
Okay.
And so that was
that's a
huge, undertaking, and they were very unhappy with us.
So you had to do 80% of the revaluations or reappraisals, if you will, in 30% of the time.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. All
And
right,
I mean, we as assessors had hired, administrative assistant assessors, and that was in their job description.
Right.
And what they found was, I don't know why, but they weren't doing that part of it, or they hadn't sat down and done the plan. Shame on us, I suppose, for not having found it earlier.
I was just going to ask you. I mean, you were on the board at that point when this was discovered.
It was.
There were other assessors that had been on the board for multiple terms. And
and
all of a
I
sudden,
stepped
it was a
away
rude
as
awakening.
chair for, a couple of those, and it was like, when it dawned on us, I was kind of like, "Are you kidding me? The last two administrative assistants hadn't done any of this," So that was really when a light went off in my head and said, guys, we have to reorganize. We can't continue. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So this is why we had to do this. And I broke a few eggs to make the omelet. Maybe this is why, I'm getting challenged this time.
Right.
But sometimes, you take that risk to get something better done.
Right.
You've been there.
Yes, I have. So let's talk about the operating budget for the assessors. What's the size of the operating budget, and what are its major components?
Well, we don't, we're a small piece of the pie when you think about it.
Yeah.
20,000 roughly. I think it's around 20. I wish I'd brought it with me. 20,000 for the assistant assessor, basically clerk.
Yeah.
And then about 70 or so for the costs
Patriot
of
and
Patriot for the software, mapping with GIS, Main Street GIS, legal and other costs that go in there.
So $100,000.
Yeah, we have dropped since 10. We dropped 7% for FY11, and we dropped another, I want to say 4 or 5% this past year. And if we enter into that 9-year contract with Patriot, I think we'll even have another reduced cost. Again, it's, by doing this with them, we eliminate a lot of the work that the office has to do. Yes, there's clerical work and so on, but, the assessing
and you kind
department.
of explain.
And this is despite the fact that there's been more work than ever with CPA and with, betterments and with Title V and, all those, and all the exemptions and those kinds of things. But that's clerical work more than, and as long as you have somebody on the board that knows those things, you can make it work.
You're up for re-election at this point, and I can't help but recall that state law now allows that certain communities to have certain town departments that are currently elected be appointed. And I think there's been mention in the past of the treasurer and the clerk, and I think actually
Those
there
two
are a
are
couple
up.
of
Yeah.
warrant articles
Yes, right.
up for town meeting and for vote, upcoming vote on that issue. And the assessors actually is another possible department that could be appointed rather than. What's your take on that? What would be your position? If someone
I have
were to
mixed.
suggest that.
I have mixed feelings on that. I feel personally, I feel it's important to represent the community, and of course, to be elected is a privilege and an honor, and I do respect that. At the same time, I'm fearful of an office like assessor being politicized or being used for political purposes. There are safeguards. I mean, granted, the DOR is going to look if somebody wants to get in there and sell abatements or whatever. It doesn't work. They're going to get caught eventually.
Right.
This town had a bad history of some of that. I'm very proud of having cleaned that up, and I will continue to keep an honest and steady, true course. And right now, there's two of us in the office that look at valuations. That would be the assistant assessor and myself. And we also, when it comes in the fall, that all the board looks at we do a printout and look to see if there's any outliers and try to track down any errors that there might be and so on. But with me gone, if that were the case, then it would be just one, and that would concern me. Then there's the question of conflict of interest. Is there this gentleman who's running against me? His wife is an employee of the Board of Assessors. How is that going to work?
She's the clerical.
Yeah, she works under us right now, and I would be concerned how that works. But that's something, if we have to, the town has to cross that bridge, then they will. But it's something to be thinking about. Do we want to go backwards? I mean, that's, as a town, we do need to keep it's an important office to keep checks and balances. But getting back to answering your question, the town of Deerfield appoints assessors. I believe Sunderland does as well. There's a number of towns in the area that appoint. Our new administrative assistant, who I had the pleasure of talking to last week in Lanesboro, it took he said 3 or 4 tries, but their assessors, their treasurer, their clerk, accountant, and collector are all appointed now. Is this a trend? Is this where it's going to? It's very possible, and it could happen in Hatfield.
Right. Let me ask you this question, and it could be that I'm interpreting some of the early financials that have been generated for fiscal 13 incorrectly, but some of the in looking at the summary of financials that have been generated by the finance team, getting a cramp. The income forecasted to come in from taxation is showing a number that's 11% ahead of last year, fiscal 12. And I guess it begs the question, if valuations remain the same, or even if total valuations change, and I understand that new growth is not significantly sizable this year.
Not this year, but what happened was that there was a lot of levy capacity from last year that wasn't, because again, year behind kind of thing. The finance people did not decide to maximize the levy capacity and decided to carry it over. And I guess there's projects. This year, for some reason, the financial team has not met. It has just been finance committee and selectmen. I think this has to do with the absence of an administrative assistant. So I can't answer a lot of how they came to the budget that they did, because I haven't been privy to it.
Okay, but I'm just asking you the question, if there's an 11% increase in the proposed amount of money coming from taxation, and granted that does include something like $300,000 worth of debt exclusion articles.
Okay.
That translates to an 11% increase in the average property tax that an individual excuse me, will be paying this coming year, which is, in my mind anyway, that's a fairly significant increase. Just wondering what your take is on that.
Again, as an assessor, my concern is valuation, not the tax itself. That is the decision of the selectmen, as you know. They have the ability to set a rate as they so choose, and to leave levy capacity on the table, as they did last year. They can leave that on there. That's purely their choice. We just come in and say, here's the valuation of the town. You bring the budget, you marry it, and then you come up with a rate. So I really can't address
what I'm doing, Christopher, is just trying to bounce off of you whether what I saw in the financials is correct, because I know you were fairly good from a math standpoint. So and I understand that the assessors have nothing to do whatsoever with setting the town budget.
Exactly.
And
or
what
the
amount
rate
has to be raised from taxation. But I was just wondering whether I was interpreting those numbers correctly.
It is a funny thing that the assessors in the recap process actually carry the papers around to the different offices. But really, the part that we have to play in it is purely to say, here's the valuation of the town. You guys go with it.
I guess it's
by the way, it is just want to clear that up with people. We don't set the tax rate.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. On the other hand, though, I just wanted to, I guess, give you a heads up, because if in fact that budget passes, and those amounts of money have to be raised from taxation, it's usually the assessors and the tax collector that take the heat when people start receiving tax bills that are 11% more than they were this year.
Right.
And so I just,
come to town meeting and make your voice heard. It is definitely, it is the people government, and they can decide, no, you're not going to do a debt exclusion and so on. And they can do it at the ballot at the same time, so.
So that does bring up an issue. For those of you who are watching the show before Tuesday, May 8th, May 8th, Tuesday evening is town meeting, the annual town meeting, and these kinds of things are going to be voted on. So if you'd like to have some sort of an impact on your taxes, if you will, going forward, you should attend that meeting and vote as you so see fit. And as I've said several times, the election day vote takes place a week later on May 15th, Tuesday, May 15th. And so you'll have an opportunity to vote for the assessors candidates and the school committee candidates as well on that day. And there will be on the ballot several what's called debt exclusion questions, where if you approve those, it basically means that those expenditures are over and above the Proposition 2.5 limit to the tax rate increase, which is something that was voted in years ago and which we would ordinarily be limited to. But with the townspeople's approval, if those questions do pass on election day, as at town meeting, they have to be ratified on election day, then those monies would be over and above the normal 2.5% increase limit. So I wanted to point that out. Christopher, anything else you'd like to share with the people that are watching at this point?
I think we pretty much covered it all. Again, I look forward to the support of the townspeople as you've given it to me in all the past years. I hope I've earned your vote and help me to finish the work that we've begun here in the reorganization of the board. And don't forget to vote on May 15th.
Right. I want to thank Christopher Smith for coming in and joining me today. Again, this is a special edition of Hatfield Currents for those of you who may have just tuned in. This show will be televised on Channel 15 up until Election Day, May 15th. And be sure to hopefully you have a chance to be sure to watch it. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 3 times during each of those days, 4 times during each of those days, and then once on Sunday. Just go to townofhatfield.org's, the town's website, and you'll see a schedule for Channel 15. You can also go to the Channel 15 bulletin board, and you'll see when these shows are going to be on. So hopefully you get a chance to look at them, and you'll find out a little bit more about Christopher, who's running for the assessors, and also the other show is Mike Poshik, who's running for school committee. Thanks again, Christopher, for joining me. For Hatfield Currents, I'm Mike Cahill. Watch yourself, Hatfield.